Chapter 136 to 137. Lamorak, a knight of the Round Table, earned a reputation as the Lion of Britain alongside renowned warriors Lancelot and Tristan. His exceptional skill with the spear was unmatched throughout the land. Prior to Lancelot's induction into the Round Table, Lamorak was widely regarded as the greatest fighter among them all. As Lamorak took to the battlefield with his long spear, the imposing aura radiating from his armor left all those around him breathless. In the Age of Gods, people possessed naturally strong physiques, and Lamorak was among the most formidable. Even Artoria couldn't help but be awed by his presence, feeling somewhat restrained as she asked, "May I ask who you are, sir?" "I am but a knight of no consequence, Lamorak." "So you are that famous knight?" she said in surprise, her expression becoming more serious as she asked, "Aren't you going to ride your horse?" She posed this question to Lamorak because he was famed for his prowess with the spear, particularly when mounted on horseback. "No need. Your swordsmanship is undoubtedly impressive, but on horseback it becomes impractical. Spear techniques, on the other hand, are effective both on foot and mounted. If I were to fight you while mounted, it would be a disgrace to my honor," Lamorak stated, expressing clear admiration for Artoria's last attack. He spoke with a tone of respect, acknowledging her skill and placing her on equal footing with himself. "If I am defeated on foot, I will accept the outcome without protest. You have my word. I have no objections. If that is your preference, then so be it." They took their positions within the circle. The soldiers surrounding them fell silent, holding their breath as they watched the scene unfold. One was the celebrated Knight Princess, while the other was the renowned knight, Lamorak, who was widely acknowledged as the unparalleled master of spear techniques in all of Britain. The clash between these two formidable opponents promised to be an epic spectacle, and for knights of the medieval era who revered combat and strength, it was the ultimate attraction. As humanity progressed from barbarism to civilization, there were several transformations in what people worshipped. In the barbaric period, people worshipped strength and nature, while in the feudal era, they worshipped power and religion. In modern times, people worship science and wealth. The times are constantly evolving, and the economic foundation and cultural progress of each era determine what people in that era will worship. However, during 5th century Britain, which was still in the Age of Gods, the focus of worship was not on money and power, but on strength. The soldiers in the arena looked on nervously, and even Tristan, who was typically melancholic, set aside his harp and approached the edge of the circle to witness the fight. Artoria and Lamorak faced each other, their bodies poised in anticipation as they gathered momentum for their upcoming clash. The sensation of momentum was difficult to put into words, but it was an all-encompassing feeling of intense focus. Their muscles were tensed, and a natural sense of awe enveloped them, heightening their awareness of the impending confrontation. Artoria, however, was still immature in this regard. Her momentum was subdued by Lamorak, and so she had to seize the initiative by unleashing a sword strike with a thunderous wind pressure aimed at Lamorak. He deflected her sword strike with his spear, resulting in a resounding metallic clash. Clang! He took a single step backward, while Artoria, pushed by the force of the impact, staggered 2 steps backwards. She furrowed her delicate eyebrows and firmly gripped the hilt of her sword, taking a quick step forward to assail Lamorak. The blade in her hand appeared to shatter into numerous fragments, moving too quickly for the naked eye to follow, leaving onlookers awestruck. However, as the most accomplished fighter in the Round Table after Lancelot, Lamorak lived up to his reputation. He expertly wielded his spear, moving gracefully like 100 blooming flowers, and parried all of Artoria's attacks. Clang, clang, clang! The clash of metal was reminiscent of a weighty orchestral movement, creating a tense and exhilarating atmosphere. Suddenly, Artoria sensed danger and instinctively turned her head, only to see a shadowy spear breaking through her sword defense and hurtling towards her like a venomous snake. With a sharp swish sound, it sliced off a few strands of her golden hair. She quickly stepped back and readied herself again, realizing that she was being outmatched by Lamorak. Shirou cast a quick glance towards the arena before turning to Gawain and asking, "Gawain, who do you think is stronger between you and Sir Lamorak?" "It's difficult to determine. I've never had the chance to spar with Sir Lamorak myself, but if I had my sun blessing, I likely wouldn't be defeated by him," Gawain mused for a moment before adding, "When it comes to spear techniques, I suspect that aside from his father, there is no one who can match his prowess." "Is he really that strong?" Shirou stroked his chin. "Yes. 10 years ago, Vortigern defeated King Uther and led the Saxons to assault Camelot. However, his forces were halted by the northern kings and he was defeated by Sir Brastias and King Pellinore," Gawain explained. "If Sir Brastias and Sir Ector are considered the most skilled swordsmen in Camelot, then Lamorak, who inherited King Pellinore's spear mastery, is surely the most proficient in that regard." "I see," Shirou nodded before posing another question. "But shouldn't Merlin be the strongest in swordsmanship?" Gawain chuckled. "Arthur, you jest. Merlin is a magus. What does he know about swordsmanship?" Shirou laughed too, but no. That guy really knows swordsmanship, and he's incredibly strong too. As they spoke, Artoria and Lamorak launched into another round of combat within the circle. Clang, clang, clang! The resounding echoes of metal colliding filled the air ceaselessly. It must be acknowledged that Lamorak was truly one of the most skilled knights of the future Round Table. In combat, he proved to be an equal match for Artoria, and in terms of technique, he even held a slight advantage over her. His mastery of the spear certainly explained why he was regarded as one of the 3 greatest warriors in Britain, alongside Lancelot and Tristan. Unfortunately, he had a problem with this particular opponent. Although Lancelot was widely recognized as the greatest knight among the 12 of the Round Table, there was actually one knight who stood above him, the founder of the Round Table and the king they served. Indeed, the 13th member of the Round Table was none other than the leader of the knights, King Arthur, Artoria Pendragon. Although she was only an apprentice knight, the factor of the Red Dragon had granted her the potential for a reversal. As she fought, a layer of magical energy began to enshroud her body. There was no doubt that this was the manifestation of Mana Burst. "Yah!" She unconsciously unleashed the magical energy within her, causing her entire body to be engulfed in a terrifyingly powerful aura. The Red Dragon's heart, like a large magical furnace, filled her body with magical energy. This was why she could compete with strong and powerful knights despite being a woman. And now, during her battle with Lamorak, she had unconsciously released her vast amount of magical energy. With a sudden surge of magical energy coursing through her veins, Artoria's physical abilities were amplified to extraordinary levels. Her strength, agility, and endurance all increased dramatically, allowing her to parry Lamorak's spear with effortless grace. Locking eyes with her opponent, she swung her sword once more, imbuing it with a fearsome amount of magical energy before unleashing it towards him with lightning-fast speed. The force behind her sword was overwhelming, and her formidable aura was simply terrifying. In fact, Lamorak even saw a colossal dragon roaring at him in that very moment. He suddenly recalled a scene from 10 years ago, the battle between his father and Vortigern. His father, a master of the spear, had effortlessly suppressed Vortigern with his skill, and could have ended him in an instant. However, a white dragon had appeared on Vortigern's body, causing him to crush King Pellinore. If it hadn't been for the intervention of the injured King Uther, Lamorak's father may not have survived that battle. He would never forget that moment. The battle between Uther and Vortigern had been like something out of a myth, with their fiery breath and the shadow of a dragon tearing apart the battlefield like a spider's web, shattering mountains in their wake. It was a truly epic battle. Lamorak realized that he was now about to face the same deadly blow that his father had faced all those years ago. His heart tightened in fear for a moment, but he gritted his teeth and struggled to overcome it, raising his spear to face his opponent head-on. To Lamorak's surprise, the anticipated intense impact never occurred. This was because Artoria's sword, unable to withstand the tremendous magical energy it contained, shattered just before she could strike him. Crack! Crack! Crunch! She withdrew her magical energy and looked at the hilt of her shattered sword in disbelief. Lamorak was equally stunned, as were all the onlookers. The battle had come to an unexpected end, leaving everyone unsure of how to determine the winner or loser. I lost, she said with a heavy heart. She had lost her sword, so it was only natural that she had lost the battle. No. Lamorak shook his head and replied, I lost. I wouldn't have been able to withstand that strike. He was a knight who pursued fair and honorable victories. Anything less than that would be an insult to him. Glancing around, he spoke with a solemn tone. I am no match for this knight. I concede that Arthur should lead. The knights from the other kingdoms whispered among themselves. If even the mighty Lamorak had admitted defeat, what chance did they have of winning? In the end, all eyes turned to Tristan. Tristan remained outside the arena and addressed Shirou, saying, Your Excellency Arthur, I do not believe myself to be a match for Sir Lamorak, so I see no need to compete. However, I believe that Sir Gawain is better suited to lead this expedition than you. Huh? Me? Gawain pointed to himself in surprise, then quickly waved his hand and responded, If Arthur is present, then let Arthur lead. Tristan turned to Gawain and explained, Sir Gawain has brought the largest number of soldiers, 5,000 in total. This makes you, Sir Gawain, the most suitable candidate to lead this expedition. The other knights nodded in agreement. With a total of only 3,500 soldiers between them and Bedivere, Gawain's 5,000 troops made him the clear choice for leadership. Despite Gawain's supposed army of 5,000 soldiers, none of them had been seen. The reason for this was that they were stationed in the forest, and their movements had gone unnoticed. Nevertheless, news of their presence had still managed to spread. When Shirou had first arrived at Caerleon Castle, his conversation with Gawain had been so loud that everyone in the vicinity had overheard that Gawain had brought 5,000 soldiers. Gawain looked embarrassed and was about to explain when Shirou interjected, I misunderstood. Sir Gawain came to celebrate my coronation on a personal level and did not bring his soldiers. What? Some of the knights exclaimed in surprise. Is that really the case? Others asked, confused. So there are no 5,000 soldiers? A few questioned, clearly disappointed. The knights were taken aback by this revelation, particularly those who had come with ulterior motives. They were so bewildered that it felt like they had been punched in the gut. Their king had ordered them to bring troops here, not just to respond to the archbishop's call, but more importantly, to go after Shirou. Initially, these knights had planned to pursue Shirou, but upon hearing that Gawain had brought 5,000 soldiers to support him, they became so scared that they backed down. And now, they're being told that it was all fake. Tristan furrowed his brow and turned to Gawain, questioning him. Sir Gawain, did you truly not bring 5,000 soldiers? Gawain nodded awkwardly, but then quickly gestured towards Shirou and stated, Nevertheless, His Excellency Arthur has brought 3,500 soldiers, and Sir Bedivere has brought another 1,500. Together, we have a total of 5,000 soldiers. What? The knights were shocked by Gawain's statement, but also puzzled. They had heard that Arthur hadn't brought any soldiers with him, so where had these troops come from? Tristan turned towards Shirou and asked, Your Excellency Arthur, if I may ask, where are your 3,500 soldiers? Before Shirou could reply, Bedivere interjected and explained, The soldiers who have accompanied Your Excellency Arthur are stationed in the forest. Artoria lowered her head and took a step back towards the edge of the arena. She knew from start to finish that this was all a scam, but she also knew that she couldn't lie. So she chose to remain silent, not wanting to speak up and cause any trouble for Shirou. "They are all warriors who have followed me during my travels," Shirou said with a smile. "However, only a small portion of them are currently stationed in the forest." "What?" Bedivere was stunned, thinking, didn't His Excellency Arthur just say that all 3,500 soldiers were stationed in the forest? Before Bedivere could ask any further questions, Shirou anticipated his confusion and explained, "Due to the destruction of the mountain pass by a giant, it has become difficult for large forces to advance. Therefore, only a small unit was left to clear the mountain pass, while the majority of my troops are currently stationed in the nearby town." Bedivere quickly grasped the situation. "Ah, I understand now." Artoria felt her face flush with embarrassment and lowered her head even further, hoping that no one would notice. She knew that Shirou was lying. They didn't have 3,500 soldiers, nor did they have a small unit clearing the mountain pass. "I understand," the knights murmured amongst themselves. They exchanged glances, and those who had ulterior motives were forced to temporarily restrain their thoughts. It became clear to the knights that their forces were outnumbered, with only 2,000 soldiers in total, including those who had simply joined out of curiosity. In contrast, the other side had 5,000 soldiers. The numerical disadvantage was too significant to ignore. Tristan nodded and turned toward Shirou, stating, "In that case, I have no objections to Arthur being the leader." Lamorak also spoke up, agreeing with Tristan by stating, "I have no objections either." The leaders of the other kingdoms also nodded in agreement, indicating their approval. Shirou stood proudly on the platform and declared, "Everyone, I am pleased to announce that this joint army will be led by me, Arthur." In response, the assembled knights began to cheer and chant his name, "Arthur! Arthur!" The soldiers of Camelot began chanting Arthur's name, and the enthusiasm was contagious, spreading to some of the soldiers from other kingdoms as well. Shirou smiled as he watched the soldiers. He was aware that those who harbored ill intentions towards him might have temporarily backed down, but he also knew that they would likely verify in private whether he truly had 3,500 soldiers. But that didn't matter. At the very least, he had bought himself some time. At this point, Shirou realized that his focus should not be on concealing the absence of the 3,500 soldiers, but on how to absorb the 2,000 soldiers into his army. Since Camelot already had 2,500 soldiers, if he could successfully absorb the additional 2,000 soldiers, their total number of soldiers would reach 3,500. Shirou stroked his chin, and he suddenly realized that he had picked up the habit from Iskandar. Shirou gathered the knights under his command and held a strategy meeting for the upcoming expedition. During the meeting, he gathered intelligence from the leading knights of various kingdoms. The archbishop urged the army to set off as soon as possible to conquer the mountain giant and the workshop of the dead apostle behind it. The knights were eager to begin the war immediately, but Shirou urged them to wait for 3 days. He suggested that they use this time to plan their arsenal and tactics and send scouts to investigate the magic workshop and the giant. Initially, the knights only wanted to conquer the giant to increase their own glory. However, Shirou's compelling arguments convinced them, especially after their defeat by Artoria. Despite this, there was one thing that they could not accept. Jordanes sternly questioned Shirou. "Your Excellency Arthur, it's reasonable to let us rest for 3 days, but how can you let a woman be the strategist?" Shirou intended to transfer that role to Artoria, a decision that was not only questioned by Jordanes, but also by other knights. Initially, Artoria was hesitant to take on the crucial role of strategist. However, after hearing Jordanes' remarks, she became indignant. She stepped forward, raised an eyebrow, and pointed at Jordanes, saying, "Sir Jordanes, if you're not satisfied, we can have another contest." Jordanes instinctively took a step back, and his natural momentum weakened a bit in front of Artoria. He responded sternly, "My lady, strategy and combat cannot be confused. I acknowledge your strength in combat, but you are not capable in the field of strategy." Before Artoria could reply, Shirou stood up and looked at Jordanes. He said, "Sir Jordanes, I hope you can respect my decision. If you feel dissatisfied, why don't you and Artoria each take 100 soldiers and engage in a simulation battle?" Jordanes nodded. "All right." He did not believe that he would lose in the field of strategy to a woman. As expected, Artoria, who was trained by Merlin, displayed exceptional strength in strategy. In the dream world's King's Game, she led the army and never lost a battle, while Kay was defeated and ran away crying for his mother. In the simulation battle with Jordanes, she quickly emerged victorious, completely suppressing him from start to finish. Jordanes was unable to accept this result and was left devastated. Shirou then had those who did not accept Artoria as their strategist each engage in a simulation battle of strategy with her. Without exception, all were defeated by her. From then on, everyone acknowledged Artoria as their strategist. What was even more remarkable was that this young girl was both exceptionally powerful in combat and strategy, despite being only an apprentice knight under Shirou. She wasn't even an official knight. According to Artoria, Shirou was hundreds or even thousands of times stronger than her, and she had lost to him several times. This realization made the knights suddenly recognize Shirou's incredible strength and look at him as if he were a monster. This left him feeling embarrassed, as in strategy, he had never won against her. The so-called losses that she had were actually in the dream world's King's Game, where he had defeated her completely. However, the knights were unaware of this fact, and Shirou had no intention of explaining himself. Therefore, people began to see him as a god of strategy. Shirou used the excuse of inspecting the army to have the leading knights take him to inspect their camps. The first camp they inspected was controlled by Jordanes and his kingdom. He approached a squad leader in charge of 10 men and asked, "What's your name?" The squad leader was overjoyed and quickly replied, "My name is Yule." Shirou responded, "I remember your name," and patted the squad leader's shoulder before moving on. Yule was dumbfounded when Shirou remembered his name. I was remembered by His Excellency Arthur, the King of Destiny and Legends." He pointed to himself, feeling a great sense of honor surge from within him. However, those around him laughed, saying, "Don't be silly. How could such a big shot remember our names?" Yule realized they were right. He was just a common soldier, a squad leader in charge of 10 men, not even a knight or a squire. Even the captain who led them often forgot his name. How could someone like the future king remember his name? What Yule didn't know was that Shirou did remember. In fact, he remembered very diligently. During his visit to the army camps, Shirou took the opportunity to learn more about the situation and remember the names of those in command. He remembered nearly 100 names, from the leading knights who commanded legions to the squad leaders who commanded 10 soldiers. This was something that an ordinary person could not possibly do. However, Shirou was no longer bound by ordinary concepts, having undergone a Saint Graph alteration of heroic spirit Emiya and experienced all the world's evil. This had greatly improved his memory, making it easy for him to remember the names of those he encountered. For people from Britain, many looked alike, making it difficult for Shirou to match the names and faces of those he encountered. However, during these 3 days, he made a great effort to do so. Artoria noticed his actions, as did other knights like Tristan and Lamorak. However, no one thought it was strange except for Artoria, who took it seriously. She had always viewed Shirou as a model for the ideal king and felt the need to learn from his every move. However, upon reflection, she realized that grabbing her ponytail was a very rude and unworthy behavior to be promoted. After inspecting the camps, Shirou returned to his residence. Artoria had some questions and was about to go after him to ask, but she was stopped by Bedivere. He apologized to Artoria for his faulty sword, which almost caused her to lose to Lamorak. "Sir Bedivere," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "please lift your head. You've done nothing wrong. I'm grateful to you for lending me the sword, and I haven't lost, so there's no need to apologize. However, I do have some questions to ask our king, so I must take my leave. Please excuse me." As she departed, Bedivere watched her retreating figure with admiration. She is a truly sincere knight. If she serves King Arthur, then he must be a sincere person as well to have earned her loyalty. But Merlin, if he were present, would have thought differently. He would have remarked that Shirou was quite dirty. In reality, Merlin was observing from afar with clairvoyance and thinking just that. Artoria entered Shirou's room and deftly pulled a notebook from her pocket as she approached him. "I have a question," she said, her demeanor that of a diligent student poised to take notes. "Why did you ask for the names of those squad leaders when passing by an army camp?" As Shirou gazed at Artoria, a sudden wave of stomach pain overtook him. After a brief pause, he posed his own question. "If you were a commoner and I were the king, and I remembered your name, how would you feel?" She took a moment to consider before answering in earnest. "I wouldn't feel anything, Shirou." He fell silent at Artoria's response, feeling a pang of sympathy for her. He realized that she had likely suppressed her emotions for so long that she struggled to empathize with others like a normal person. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "It's hard to explain. Maybe you could write it down for now." "Of course, my king," she replied with a nod, burying her head in her notebook to take notes. She seemed to treat Shirou as her teacher, eagerly absorbing the knowledge of how to be a king from him like an obedient student. Once she had finished taking notes, she turned to him and said, "Please rest well. As for dinner, let me bring it to you." "No need," he replied. "I'll go to the army camp and eat dinner with the soldiers." "Okay, I understand," she noted in her notebook before taking her leave. Shirou felt somewhat helpless as he watched her go. He couldn't quite articulate his reasoning for wanting to dine with the soldiers. His actions were guided by the principle of "a true gentleman would die for his friends," which emphasized the importance of human relationships and the meaning of life in reality. Shirou, being a person with a modern mindset, understood the importance of human connections and knew how to leverage them effectively. Remembering the names of the squad leaders might not appear significant to those knights, but for the soldiers, it played a crucial role in boosting morale and loyalty. In the soldiers' eyes, a leader who made the effort to remember their names demonstrated that they valued and respected them as individuals. It was a powerful way to win the hearts and minds of the soldiers, fostering camaraderie and loyalty within the ranks. On the other hand, a leader who couldn't recall the names of their soldiers was seen as indifferent and uncaring, which could erode trust and commitment among the troops. There's a saying that a true gentleman is willing to lay down their life for their friends. However, when the decisive moment arrives, it can also mean shifting one's loyalty and allegiance. It was a blind spot that Shirou was able to analyze thanks to the wisdom of a king, drawing from his own case studies and modern wisdom. Despite being an ordinary person without innate intelligence, Shirou's ability to learn was precisely what set him apart. He was determined to make progress, and that was all that mattered. As night fell, Shirou left his room and joined the soldiers for dinner. This was a pleasant surprise for the soldiers since the commanders, who often regarded themselves as nobility, seldom dined with them. Despite the fact that Shirou was soon to be crowned as king, he ate with the soldiers, which made them feel both honored and humbled. During dinner, Shirou managed to lift the spirits of the soldiers. He called out the names of the squad leaders he had memorized and had them compete in front of the campfire. The clashing of swords and metals instantly enlivened the atmosphere among the soldiers, who were surprised and honored by Shirou's ability to recall their names. This brought them closer to him, creating a strong bond between them. In a moment, Shirou had successfully enlivened the atmosphere, and the soldiers celebrated by patting each other on the back and dancing around the campfire. They even invited Shirou to join in, and he fearlessly accepted, happily dancing with them around the campfire. As Shirou was about to leave, he heard the beautiful sound of a harp emanating from the forest, which was very pleasant to the ears. It was around 8 o'clock in the evening, and with the moon being scarce, it was difficult for modern people to fall asleep. Intrigued, Shirou decided to follow the sound of the harp. He came upon the same scene as before. Tristan was sitting on the treetop, gently stroking the harp, and the fairies, who had been drawn in by the music, were circling around and listening to the enchanting melodies. As the song came to an end, Tristan opened his eyes and was surprised to see Shirou. "You've come to listen again?" "Of course. Not many men listen to my music. I don't understand why there should be a difference between music for men and women. I only know if it sounds good or not. If it sounds good, I'll listen, and if it doesn't, I'll walk away," Shirou replied honestly. Tristan jumped down from the tree and approached him. "Can you play the harp?" "A little bit." Tristan then handed the harp to him and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" "Sure, I'll give it a shot." Shirou eagerly took the harp and rubbed his palms together in excitement. He had always dreamed of playing music and had even learned to play instruments and sing. However, his homeroom teacher in elementary school never allowed him to participate in the class choir competition. Despite this setback, music remained one of Shirou's few talents. With the harp cradled in his hands, he braced himself and began plucking the strings, letting the melody fill the air. "Ah! Help me! What on earth is this? Help me! Help me! What kind of music is this? It's like it's crawling out of a sewer. Ah! I want to go back to fairyland. The human world is too scary. Oh my God, Mom!" Shirou was immersed in his own musical world, while the fairies covered their ears and fled in terror. "Ga, ga, ga, ga!" The birds in the forest flew up in alarm and fled as if they were escaping, while Tristan fell to the ground, clutching his stomach with a look of agony. "Stop it! Quickly! Stop!" he cried out, consumed with regret. He was almost in tears as he realized his mistake. If only he hadn't assumed that just because someone could listen to his music, they must also understand music. Then he wouldn't have had to endure this hellish wailing of sound. Not only was it completely out of tune, but it also gave people the sensation of having a heart attack. Tristan couldn't find the words to describe this kind of music, but if someone from the 21st century were here, they would definitely recognize it. This was the sound of nails scratching against glass. Shirou played the sound of nails scratching against glass on a harp, and he was completely absorbed in it. He also occasionally hummed completely off-tune sounds that could hardly be described as singing. In a way, Shirou's ability to produce such a sound could also be considered a talent. However, it was no surprise that prior to his transmigration, his homeroom teacher never allowed him to participate in the choir. It's one thing if he couldn't sing well, but it would be quite another if someone got hurt because of his singing. Just like now. Tristan clutched his chest, collapsed onto the ground, and turned pale, as if he were on the brink of death from a heart attack. The sound of nails scraping against glass is unbearable for most people, let alone the agony of prolonged torture. As the music came to an end, Shirou let out a contented sigh. He had once dreamt of a future in music, but the harshness of reality had crushed those aspirations. He had assumed that his musical talent had withered away over time, but after playing this piece, He realized that his talent still lay dormant within him, waiting to be revived. But, huh? Where did the fairies go? Shirou panicked. Sir Tristan, what's wrong with you? Are you having a seizure? Please don't roll your eyes. Tristan regained his senses and grabbed Shirou's arm with a stiff hand. He spoke with a sorrowful tone. Your Excellency Arthur, please refrain from touching my harp again and do not play music in front of me. Shirou responded with a smile. Why not? I believe music is a way for us to communicate. Let me sing a song for you first. Tristan's response was immediate and resolute. No! The scene was too overwhelming for Tristan, and the encounter ended in tragedy as he fainted.